I planned a surprise party for my parents and surprised them with recordings of every conversation they had about me. 50 guests packed into my parents' living room when I flipped on the projector screen. My mom clutched her chest, and my dad laughed nervously as everyone shouted surprise for their 30th anniversary. I'd spent 3 months organizing this event, renting chairs, ordering catering, flying in relatives from across the country. But the real surprise wasn't the decorations or the cake. It was the USB drive in my pocket containing 18 months of audio files. My hands were steady as I walked to the front of the room and plugged it into the sound system. My uncle asked what we were watching. I told him it was a tribute video. The first recording was from last Thanksgiving. My mom's voice filled the room, crystal clear. She was telling my aunt that I was a disappointment who peaked in high school. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My dad cleared his throat and tried to stand, but my cousin's husband was blocking the aisle. The recording continued. My mom explained that my younger brother Gavin was the only child who made something of himself. She said I was 32 years old and still renting an apartment like a college student. My aunt's voice came through agreeing and adding that I'd always been the slow one. I watched my mom's face turn white. She looked at me with wide eyes and mouthed the word, "Stop." I pressed play on the next file. The second recording was from Christmas dinner. My dad was in the kitchen with my brother, and they didn't know I'd left my phone recording on the counter. My dad called me a leech. He said he regretted paying for my college because I'd wasted his money on a useless degree. Gavin laughed and said at least he wasn't stuck in some dead-end graphic design job making logos for pet stores. My dad agreed and said he wished I'd been more like my brother, someone who actually understood success. The guests were frozen. My grandmother had her hand over her mouth. My cousin's wife was already recording on her phone. I pulled out a folded piece of paper from my jacket pocket. It was a pay stub from my actual job, the one I'd never told them about. Senior creative director at a Fortune 500 company. Base salary plus bonuses put me well into 6 figures. I'd kept it secret for years because I wanted to see who they really were. The third recording was from my birthday in March. Nobody had called me that day. I'd waited until midnight checking my phone every hour. This recording was from a group call between my mom, my dad, and my brother. They were laughing about how I probably spent my birthday alone again. My mom said she'd text me later in the week when she remembered. My dad said not to bother because I never noticed anyway. Gavin suggested they use the money they would have spent on my gift to upgrade his home theater system instead. The room was completely silent now. My mom tried to speak, but her voice cracked. She managed to say that those were private conversations. I told her private doesn't mean they didn't happen. The fourth recording was the worst one. It was from 6 weeks ago when I'd visited for Father's Day. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but actually hid in the hallway closet with my phone recording. My dad told my mom he wanted to update their will to leave everything to Gavin. He said I didn't deserve the house because I hadn't earned anything in my life. My mom agreed and said I'd probably just sell it to fund some failed business. Gavin's voice came through saying he'd been waiting for them to make that decision. He suggested they tell me at Christmas just to see my face. The entire room erupted. Relatives were shouting over each other. My aunt was crying. My uncle called my dad something I won't repeat. Gavin tried to slip toward the back door, but my cousin stepped in front of him. I walked to the center of the room and pulled out one final document. It was a letter from my company's legal department confirming that I'd been selected as the sole beneficiary of a deceased executive's estate. He was a mentor who believed in me when my own family didn't. The inheritance was worth more than my parents' house, their cars, and their retirement combined. I didn't need anything from them. I never had. I just needed them to know that I knew exactly who they were. My mom collapsed into a chair and sobbed that I'd humiliated them in front of everyone. I told her I'd learned from the best. My dad finally found his voice. He stammered that this was an ambush and that I'd twisted everything. I asked him if his own words were twisted. I asked him if the recordings were lying. I asked him when the last time was that he called me just to ask how I was doing. He couldn't answer. Nobody could. The room stayed silent except for my grandmother, who stood up and walked over to me. She cupped my face in her hands and told me she was sorry. She said she didn't know. She said she should have paid more attention. I hugged her and told her she was the only one who ever made me feel like family. I left the party without looking back. My phone buzzed for days with messages I never opened. 3 months later, Gavin's wife filed for divorce after learning about an affair he'd been hiding. My parents sold their house and moved to a smaller condo because they couldn't afford the mortgage without the rental income they'd been lying about. I donated my mentor's estate to a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. My name is on the plaque in the lobby of the building where I work.